All right. The topic of this workshop is aging in recovery. I'm Big Monk, you're just chair, and our speakers today are going to be Dawn S. and Jackie J. Dawn, you're up.
Hi everybody, I'm Dawn. I'm an addict. Where are the old people? I don't see any old people here. First of all, I want to thank the people that gave me the honor of allowing me to share my experience, strength, and hope here. It's very humbling and a little intimidating, a lot intimidating. But I'm very honored to be here and grateful to be able to stand up here and say, you know, I'm clean and I'm above a certain age and I'm a female, and that's not the horrible thing that I thought it would be. I kind of grew up right on the edge of the hippie thing. You know, how many here are old hippies? Yes. I got right behind everything. I'm always like 10 years behind everything, right? You know, so like when punk music came around, I was saying, peace, man. You know, tune in, drop out, you know, so, but I always wanted to be that. You know, I remember when I was younger, I saw that Woodstock movie. I don't know if anybody remembers the Midnight Madness things. You should go to younger people won't know this, right? But you could go at midnight to these movies and they'd show like rock and roll things, and you could party, you could barely see the screen, you know, because of the smoke and all that kind of stuff. And I remember seeing the Woodstock movie, and I wanted to be that girl with the flowers in her hair, and you know, she was dancing like this, and you know, so that was part of my experience in wanting to party, because I didn't really look at it as I'm going to be a drug addict, and you know, I wouldn't be that girl if I had been there. You know, I'd be probably somewhere in the mud, unconscious, you know, with some puke somewhere, who knows, you know. So that's what I learned in addiction. When I turned 30, I had not got into recovery yet, but I remember I freaked out because I was like, first of all, it's a little bit different, I think, for women than it is for men. And also, in our society, youth is so, you know, you must be young, or, you know, in some ways you may feel cast aside and stuff like that. So when I turned 30, I was like, my life is over. You know, I'm 30, you know, the physical things are, gravity starting to, you know, come this way and all that kind of stuff. And so I got this this CD on aging and dying by, and I mispronounce stuff a lot because I read. I'm some kind of self-educated. Anybody ever heard of Ram Dass? So I got that at 30, right? And I listened to it, and I was thinking about that when I started thinking about this topic, because he talked about how in our culture here in the West, we're so afraid of this, you know, of aging, and we, you know, when people pass away, we put them in hospitals and, you know, stuff like that. And he said he was in India and he was working with these people, and he had a friend come up to him, and the friend said, "Wow, you're really old," and he was offended. You know, it's like, well, how could you say that to me? But you know, that's a cultural thing. You know, it's only here in the West that we consider that an insult. And why would that be an insult? You know, we just have different values at this point. I have different values at this point in my life. It's no longer that important to be the cutest thing in the club, or have said, you know, had to say the most coolest thing in the meeting, maybe. Sometimes I like to be the person that does that. You know, so that really struck me, and I thought that'd be something good to share here. Also, for me, y'all, this is really a grace thing. Because, you know, and also I have the disease of addiction, but I also have some other things like depression and some other things that can mimic some of these. And I've been going through a lot of physical things, and I'm really grateful because in the past couple of years I got some relatively decent insurance and stuff like that. And I have to say that because I can get really upset with God that He is allowing me to have these problems. You know, somehow I'm not supposed to feel uncomfortable things in my body. But anyway, I was dealing with some of that, and it was very upsetting to me. And I was getting in a really bad place with it. And, I talked with my sponsor and, shared a little bit about it. And then I got this text that said, and of course I prayed. I love in Narcotics Anonymous that I can have a higher power of my own choice. It doesn't have to be your higher power. It's a personal thing. There are atheists that can work the 12 steps. So, that's where I go at last, where we're supposed to start at. Higher power, I just can't do this anymore. I have to have that surrender to this. What do you want me to do? And then I got this text and it said, would you be interested in sharing a workshop? And, I was taught in Narcotics Anonymous to never say no to an NA request. So I said, of course I will. And then they sent the thing back and it said, the topic will be aging and recovery. So I'm like, okay, you really, HP, you have a great sense of humor. So what can I share on that, that I got through it and I didn't use? And that's really the entire message of Narcotics Anonymous. But I do have some other things like, okay, I've been taught you never say no to an NA request, but at my age, there are some self-care things I need to do. I can't be of service like I would love to be 24/7. In our area, there are a lot of women that need sponsorship. And, I can't say yes to every single one of them. I really wish I could. And I try it sometimes, and then I upset people and it's not fair to them because I can't be available 24/7, not to more than 6 people. And also I've learned that with my sponsees, I can say, this is a self-care day for me, and I need some time to myself, and you have a network, use your network. I make sure that, everybody has everybody's number. I have women that I work with that sometimes I think they should be my sponsor, because they really, I admire their program. They work these steps, they work these principles, and they help other women and other suffering addicts. So where is that balance? Where is that balance in being of service to Narcotics Anonymous, being available to help another addict, but not overwhelming myself to a point where I'm like, not taking care of myself physically. I talked to this wonderful lady before the meeting, and I was like, oh my God, she is the one that needs to be up here, because she was taking care of herself physically. And sometimes it can I like what she said about it being a small decision. It can be just as small as I'm going to have yogurt for breakfast instead of that donut, which I'm not real good at. It depends on what day it is. And, moving. I have a really good friend that's a little bit older than me in recovery, and she talks about that. She's like, one of the main things we have to do is just keep moving. Just keep moving. And again, it's a balance thing for me. It's like, okay, I need to keep moving, but there's also times when I need to have that stillness and rest. But then, being the addict that I am, I'm like, this rest feels so good, now I just want to isolate for the next week. But I'm really blessed in the people I have in my life, my sponsor and my sponsees, because they will call me out because they need me. And sometimes that's hard because I'm like, well, I don't want to be needed right now. I just want to rest, and they're like, well, where are you? So finding that balance and being available is real important to me. Taking basic self-care. This is a body that I've used for years. And, I love that analogy that people talk about with the car. You drive a car, you don't change the oil, you don't, clean, wash it and stuff like that. It's going to get run down and beat up and, it's going to collapse. So, we have to do the self-care. We have to put the oil in, we have to try to eat right, we have to get the rest. The power that I get from a power greater than myself is where I'm able to be available. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to. And I was thinking, too, there's a saying I've heard that says, to thine own self be true. Because the only person that can really know what's between me and my higher power, what's the balance between isolating and resting, and what's the balance between be of service or overdoing it to a point where I can't help anybody. Only me and my higher power can know that. And the only way I can do that is try to, maintain that conscious contact and ask. And I forget that. I'll run right over it. I'm like, okay, I need to be doing this, and let me partition out everything like I think it should be doing, and I forgot to ask, and now I'm in a mess because I've overextended. So, it all goes back to the steps. It all goes back to the surrender in the 3rd step, the maintenance in the 11th step, and practicing the principles of all of them. And for me, it's also finding that balance, spiritually, mentally, and physically. But we think more about the physical stuff at our age. When you start getting older, that becomes a higher priority. And I had so many people tell me, you are too hard on yourself. And I'm like, you don't know me. How could you say that? Because I think I'm the laziest person in the world. But everybody else doesn't tell me that. I've never had one sponsor say, you are so lazy, you need to work on that defect. They've all said, you're too hard on yourself. And I still get baffled at that. I'm like, well, I guess it's because I still am learning to find the balance. There's a little cartoon I saw before I came in here, going around the internet, and it's like all these people are walking around. I think it's an NA one. It might be on the history one, I think. But they're all walking around, and they had the little thought bubble over their head, and they're all thinking, man, these other people seem to have their stuff together, and I don't. But they're all thinking the same thing. And I'm so glad that my higher power let me see that, because I haven't really been coming to conventions that long. When I was using, I was very much out in the middle of stuff and everything, but when I stopped using, I learned to enjoy myself. Then I went to the other extreme, so it was hard for me to get out and be in groups, and I'm good one-on-one, but in groups I would get really intimidated and stuff like that. And then I got good friends in recovery that drug me to the conventions. And they taught me things like, okay, well, if you want to get good breakfast at the Continental Breakfast, then get there early. There won't be anything there if you don't. And I slowly started coming to enjoy these things, and instead of it being like a chore. And then I met somebody who was very involved in that type of thing and became involved with them. And I started hanging around with people that got such joy out of these things. They get that charge of being in contact with another addict. They get that energy. Their face lights up. When they speak, and it's not just him, it's these different people. You'll know when you know who I'm talking about. These people, when they're sharing about recovery, it's like they don't even have to say anything. The words done, wah, 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 they could be doing that. You can see the light, the joy, because they're free. I remember I was at Greensboro, I think. They had a really good convention. And I was sitting next to the guy, and they were doing that countdown thing, and all girls were up on the shed, they were playing Brick House, and and I looked at him, I was like, wow, they're really celebrating. That's great. And his face had that light. He said, we are happy because we're free. And I was like, that's where I get the rush. That's where I'm like, oh my God, you're right. That's how I want to live. I want to live my recovery like it's an exciting adventure, and a joy. And I get inklings of that because I get the honor of being around those kind of people. And that's kind of the antidote for some of the other things I was talking about. And it can be that way, whether you're 90, whether you're 19, it can be that way. But we have to be around those. I have to be around those people, and I have to do the same things that they're doing, and that's the only way I can get it. So, how am I doing? I think my higher power says I have said enough today, but I want to thank everyone very much for letting me share, and I love you all.
This is Jackie.
I'm Jackie. I'm an addict. A very grateful addict. Thank you for sharing about the balance, because I have a hard time finding that balance too. You were talking about being free in recovery, and I have found that freedom being here. And I remember when I first came in, I had people around me, which was really has been a blessing, that had time. in the program, and they were happy people, and they were always laughing and talking about the crazy stuff that they had done. And while they were talking about it, I couldn't understand it because I was still in a lot of pain. And I remember saying to myself one day, if they can do that, I can too. And that's what I started doing. And I had a sponsor once told me, she said, Jackie, if you're going to be in recovery, she says, you have a choice to be miserable or not. And I remember choosing not to be miserable. And I can say, since I've been here, I have had an adventurous recovery and a happy one. Because I have always listened, not always, but a certain percentage of the time, I'm not going to say how much, and try to live the NA way of life. Because of a lot of stuff that was poured into me early in my recovery. A lot of those people have passed on now, and but I still have their spirit of what they said and what they taught me, and how they led me. And what I used to love about it is they would always tell me where the potholes were in the road and the dead-end streets, and they would say, you know, you can go down that road if you want to, but this is what you're going to find. Aging and recovery, I was like you when they asked me that. I was like, wow, what a topic, you know. Because to be honest about it, I have 26 years, and a couple of years ago, I became messed up mentally because I had this time, and I wondered, where in the hell had I been? You know, it's like I just woke up one day and it's like, you have what? And you've been clean, what? And, you know, I have a husband, and who is this man right here? And, you know, what am I doing? You know, it was like I had stepped into somewhere where I was unfamiliar. And somebody told me, they said, well, Jackie, if you've never been 20-something years clean before, how do you know how it's supposed to feel? Well, that helped me come back into a day at a time because I was completely messed up. And at 22 years clean, I became sick with the disease called polymyositis. And I ended up in a wheelchair. I was like a 9-month-old child. I couldn't do anything for myself. My mother had to move in to help. My husband had to bathe me and put me in bed, take me out of bed. I couldn't even get up out of this chair without help. And I was messed up behind that too, because I said I've been clean all these years. What is going on? You know, why are you doing this to me, God? Why? You know, I've been trying to do all the right things, and here I am sick. You know, stuck in a wheelchair, and what's so funny, you see people in wheelchairs in the stores, and they be out in the middle of the floor. My mother and my husband and my daughters, they used to push me into the store, and they would leave me in the middle of the floor. And you know, in the middle of the floor, you can't see anything because you're trying to turn around and see stuff. Or they would push me up into the row of clothes, and they would be behind me, and they would say something like, "Isn't this skirt beautiful?" And you know, I'm trying to turn around and look at it. So when I see people in wheelchairs now in the store, I have a different respect for them. About a year later, I started to do well, did very good, and I had another flare-up because they weaned me off the medication too early. And they didn't tell me when you get old you would have to take medication, you know. And then some people, no, they should have told me that when I first came in. But then they told me, if we would have told you some things, Jackie, would you have stayed? I'm like, probably not. But I had another flare-up, and I ended up back the same way. I ended up not being able to do anything for myself. I couldn't drive, couldn't do anything. And I became numb, just numb, because I could not understand why God would let me get all this clean time, bless me with all this clean time, and allow me to get sick. I just could not comprehend that. And I was really messed up for a long time, but I didn't use. I knew that was not an option. And so I started to recover from that. The second time it was a very slow process. But the good news was I kind of knew what to expect from the first time it happened. So I don't want to say it was a little bit easier, but the acceptance was a little bit better. And after I started to recover from that, and get past the, being angry with God. And one thing I learned about being angry with God, we know who wins. We know who wins. It doesn't matter. And I started to get a lot more acceptance. Okay, this is where I am now. But what I realized, and this is from being up in Narcotics Anonymous, it's not going to last. It's only a day at a time. And I could see past where I was. It's what you all taught me, a day at a time, stay in the moment. Don't get out of the moment. And that's what I did, a day at a time. And because of my limited mobility, my husband bought me a stationary bike. They bought me all the physical therapy equipment, that the same stuff they have in the physical therapist's office. They got me some stuff like that to help. So I slowly started to come around. I went to visit my daughter. I have two daughters. One's a teacher in Albuquerque, and the other one just retired from the WNBA. When she says she's retired. But I went to visit her overseas in 2012. And it was snowing the whole while we were there. And on January the 2nd, 2012, never will forget it, I fell and fractured my femur and ended up in the hospital in Seoul, Korea. I was so... I just could not. You talk about comprehending the first illness. That third time, it was just baffling to me. A whole week, again, I was numb. I didn't speak to nobody, and being somewhere in a foreign land and you don't understand the language and their practices are a lot different than ours. It was very confusing. It was very fearful. Thank God my daughter knew the language, and they got us a translator, so that helped. And I think she was a little lazy, but that's just my opinion. She wasn't translating fast enough for me. But I have to say, through that, I did not use. Because I could have just said, screw this, and just, walked away. Well, I couldn't have walked away. I was in the hospital. And the thing about over there, I was in the hospital for 3 weeks and could not get out of bed for 2. Now, you talk about depressing and, want to go jump out a window or something, because, and one time I did, I said to myself, I'd rather just be dead to have to go through this, Lord, why? Just kill me. Just take me on, But I recovered from that. I got better after 3 weeks in the hospital. And then when I came back over here and I went to see an orthopedic doctor, and he looked at me, he said, they kept you in the hospital 3 weeks? He just could not comprehend it. He said, we would have had you home in 2 days walking, So I got angry again. Them doggone people, they didn't know what they were doing, But looking at it, by me being an American and the only American in that hospital, they, I think, took safety precautions just to make sure that I would be okay. And it was an experience. I tell you, if you've never been to a foreign land, in the hospital, I wish I don't know nobody, but I really got to see the culture firsthand, and it was very, very interesting. It was not my first time there. But, being angry at God and trying to figure out, this is why I was so messed up, trying to figure out where do I fit now. I got disability right away from the first illness. Right away, the doctors just gave it to me, said you're going to be like this the rest of your life, and nothing you can do. And I've learned that they don't have the final say, so God does. I couldn't work anymore. My whole life changed. I had to find a new norm. And I was messed up because I did not know what a new normal was. I was always going, I was always doing. I had a happy recovery. I have to say that I really did. And I was always involved, had sponsorees, going out of town. I got a chance to go out of the country several times, had good jobs, had good coworkers, some of them. But my recovery had been an adventure and a happy and joyous occasion, and then all of a sudden it came to a screeching halt. Again, how messed up was I? I had stopped going to meetings because I couldn't get there like I wanted to. But I started coming back to NA a couple of years ago. When I first came in, I went to both programs. I went to all 12-step programs. They told me to go, I went. It wasn't no big deal because they told me you may not need it right now, but at some time you will need it. So I just went. But I started coming back maybe 2-3 years ago because I felt like I needed that connection again since I had been gone for so long, because I did go to another 12-step program, and I grew up. I like to say I grew up in recovery because I was 33 when I came here. Being 33, I didn't know nothing. You remember they used to say you don't know nothing because if you did, you wouldn't be up in here. And as I kept coming back, I realized that I didn't. But I'm learning through this that God never lets us down no matter what happens in our lives, and that slowing me down, giving me another norm, was for me to see some things that have happened in my life that I took advantage of. I was ungrateful. I have a good husband. I was ungrateful to him. And I always saw his flaws. I have a very loving family, very loving family. My mother and father, my father was an alcoholic and my mother was an Al-Anon. So, just by them having that foundation was really a blessing. Another thing I got to see, let me know when my time's up.
Oh, no, you're good.
Was what love is. It talks about love in Living Clean. I really saw what unconditional love is, and it was so much pouring out of that love when I became ill that it was almost overwhelming, because I talked to people I had not talked to in 30 years. They were calling me. People that I went to school with, friends that I had not seen in years, people I didn't even know, that new friends, that new family members were calling. And God showed me unconditional love, and I was able to see it firsthand. Whereas before, I knew about love, okay, you love me, I love you, but the deep down unconditional love, and that is something that you find in these rooms. We love you no matter what. And I think it's hard for newcomers to understand that when they first come in, because, love had consequences. It had stuff attached to it if you love me. But when we come in here and we say keep coming back, we mean it. Please keep coming back. And I remember when I first came in, I had all these ideas, and you share this stuff, and you think you share this good stuff, and they said, "Keep coming back, sweetheart." And at the time, you didn't know what they meant by "keep coming back, sweetheart." But as I kept coming back, and the love that I see now. And sometimes, with the newcomers, and I don't know if there's any in here or not, I wish I could just give them just stick around, just hang around. It works. I had a sponsor relapse after 18 months, and we were sitting one day talking, and this is after she had relapsed, and I told her, I said, I cannot tell you that I won't stay clean. I can't tell you. I said, because I don't know from day to day. And I think I messed her up because she looked me dead in the eye and she said, "You mean to tell me you don't know if you would get high again?" I was like, "No, it's a day at a time." With a day at a time comes that love that is poured out in here. And another thing happened during my illness. I saw people that I would never see before. I have a church home, and I began to see some of the church members that was really messed up. and one of them is a minister's wife, and I'm not taking her inventory, but for some reason I went to a meeting and she was sitting up in the meeting, and I was blown away. I was just blown away because these are so self-righteous people, I would talk to her on a regular basis. Not on a regular basis. Every now and then I'd go and say something to her, and she would just brush me off. So one day she came up to me, she said, "You still going to those classes?" That's what people call them, classes. And I said, "Yes, I am," and she walked away. So one day I got a chance to have lunch with her. How about that? And we were talking, and she said, "I just don't believe I have a problem." And then, she went on, and I said, "Didn't you tell me you had been in a treatment center twice?" Something's wrong with that picture. She has finally started to come around, but I see, God opened my eyes where I'm able to see people that really need this program, but it's not up to me to go tell them they have a problem. Just certain things they say to me, certain things they do. We were at a my time up.
Oh, you are good. You're good.
We were at a Christmas thing at my husband's church, and they were changing head of ministries, and one of the ladies got up and she gave this speech, and she was talking, and she said, "I want y'all to know," and this is just how she did it, "I just want y'all to know I would pop me a cork anytime. And I would get on that plane and go to Las Vegas because I love Las Vegas." And I'm sitting there looking at her. I said, now she's making this announcement in front of all these people. And then she came over to the table where my husband and I was, and she said, "And I can handle it too." And I said, okay, that tells me right there that she has an issue, but it was not to me to say, you got a real problem, But just having the ability to see this and keep my mouth shut. Because once upon a time I would have tried to fix you. You need help. Let me show you the way. And that is what I got through all this illness. What was such a devastation in my life has really turned out to be a good asset. And that's the blessing right there, because I don't walk as fast as I used to. I'm able to slow down more and see what's going on in life instead of just doing, going. Another thing also about slowing down and taking care of myself, which is a big issue. I'm like you. And you know, sometimes people say, well, Jackie, I don't see you such and such. I'm tired. I can't go like I used to. I could do 10 things in one day once upon a time. I'm lucky to get 2 in, and one is waking up in the morning. Getting up. It takes me about 30, 45 minutes or an hour sometimes just to get up and, sometimes I get up and walk like Frankenstein. I have to stretch my hips. I have to move. I have to bend down, But it's just a blessing still to be able to move and to, do the things that I enjoy doing. I don't travel as much now because we were on a road trip. I went to visit my daughter out in Arizona when she was out there, and we were on a road trip from Arizona to went to Arizona, then we went to the Grand Canyon, and we went to Albuquerque. I had a panic attack in the car. Now, my husband and daughter thought that was funny. They just cracked up behind us. And they told me it was all psychological, but it was not, and it was the first time that had happened in my life. So I had to get out the car. They had to massage my hips, and I had to take off my bra because I felt like it was squeezing me. So that was kind of an exciting, fearful trip, but I really enjoyed it once I got past the panic attack. Going back to taking medicine, when I said I do take medication, and I told the doctor when I first had started to take it, and I've had a couple of surgeries also, that I was an addict. And I was going on and on and on, and he says, I'm not treating your addiction. He said, that's what your 12-step program is for. Oh, my. He said, I'm treating your pain. He said, so it's up to you, the quality of life that you want to live. Do you want to stay in this wheelchair? Do you want to continue to be ill, or do you want to get better? Well, I chose life because I know that if I'm going to relapse, and this is just my personal opinion, I'm going for what I like. I just feel that way. I'm not going to play with myself with a glass of wine, a beer. I'm just not. And I went passed by a trap the other day, a few weeks ago, and still today my stomach got that knot in my stomach and started feeling all nervous and stuff. And my head told me, well, at least you know where it is now if you want to. And I entertained it for a hot second, but that's about it because that is not the solution. And I'm a street drug person. I'm not I took pills during my addiction, but I took pills and I drank with it. So I never knew how the pills made me feel because I had a combination of stuff going on there. And I'm going to say this, my grandfather, I have to talk about time, my grandfather and my grandmother. My grandfather raised marijuana, grew marijuana in the front yard. Front yard. He grew it among the corn and the sunflower and all that. And nobody, the police never bothered them. But I can remember one day I had popped some pills and was smoking marijuana and probably had snorted some stuff. And he looked at me and he said, and I had drank, I don't know if anybody remember the bull, look out for the bull. And I had drank a couple of those. And he said, you don't know if you're going or coming, do you? And looking back over it, I didn't. But that's just the kind of addict, I am, or I was, or I can still be today. This program has given me life. And it has given me life living one day at a time. And as I said, I was messed up because I had time and I wondered where I had been all these years. Another thing that happens during recovery too, there's a lot of healing that takes place between family also if you keep coming back. Children, the offenses of men, parents, bad relationships. That's what the steps helps us with, even if it was not our fault. The steps are there to help us mend those broken relationships. And I can say today, that most of them have been mended, although about 3 years ago, I was blindsided by my daughter, my oldest one. She brought up something that happened 30 years ago and told the grandkids, and that messed me up. I couldn't speak to her for 2 months. But still, doing an inventory, I was able to see over the years my part in it. And this is what y'all had taught me. And it was a step 10 process. I realized during that time that I had always treated her differently than I did my other daughter. Now it took that for me to see it. And it took me reading the steps one day to see that it was like a light bulb went on. And that had been my part over the years, and that's why she was so rebellious, even as grown as she is. So I was able to admit my wrong and mend those fences. And my mother said she went to therapy. I was like, good, she needed to go. She needed it. I was happy to hear that. But this program has given me life these 26 years. And a day at a time, I plan to, stay here. I don't plan on going anywhere until the good Lord calls me home. I have life here. I have love here. I have commitment here. I love you all. Because when I come in here, and I've gone to meetings sometimes, and I've just sat there with my eyes closed. I got there early and just sat there, just feeling the love, just feeling the connection. And it talks about the connection and living clean. And if anybody hasn't read this, please do. I just started. But I think my 30 minutes are about up.
You go as long as you want. We'll get it on time.
Oh, I am? Okay, he told me that.
I'm enjoying listening to you.
I'm like, I don't know, I keep on talking. I can talk once I get started. But in chapter 3, it talks about a spiritual path. And, when I got here, they told me that I needed to find a God in my understanding, and it didn't matter. I could get a tree, a doorknob, a chair, or whatever, as long as I get one. And in treatment, I can remember people were tree huggers. They made trees their higher power, and they would go out in the morning to hug the tree and talk to the tree, but that worked. But, mine I choose to call God. But it talks about the spiritual path. And I have learned that to stay here, you have to have a God if you plan to stay here. If you don't, then, my heart goes out to you, because it is very heart-wrenching to see people go out when you know that there's another way of life. And they can have that way of life if they just keep coming back and find a God of their understanding, because the only somebody that is going to help me today is God. And I don't pray to him every day. I'm not one of those ritualistic people. I get on my knees every day. I read my literature every morning. I don't. Sometimes I go a week or so without doing it. And then I start to feel the effects of it, so I have to run back to it. I just recently started taking a theology course, almost 2 years ago, and I took that course because God has been so good to me that I wanted to know more about him. And since I've been taking that, I'm still an addict, okay? That's, no matter how much I learn about God, I'm still an addict. And I know I'm subject to error at any time. I saw a t-shirt the other day said, warning, you may do something stupid at any time. And I thought I need that t-shirt. I know who I am. And by me knowing who I am, and the grace that God has given me, I do believe that I can walk in that and still be who I am, because this book talks about being who you are, learning who you are, being comfortable with who you are, living in the freedom that you talked about and who you are. And the freedom is being able to look people in the eye, be able to walk by people and feel that connection, be able to talk to anybody, without feeling afraid of they're not going to like me. Well, if they don't like me, that's their problem. That's what my sponsor told me. That ain't your business if people don't like you. But just, feeling the spiritual connection that each of us have, that each of us get when we keep coming back here. And as you keep coming back in the 11th step, sometimes the 11th step reads as if it's a Pollyannic kind of up in the sky thing. You're going to get all this stuff if you work this. Yeah, right. But it actually is. I mean, you can find that peace. You can find that balance. You can find that understanding, and you can live happily ever after in this program, a day at a time. On page 80, at the 81 actually, the last paragraph, and I'm going to shut up now, it says, "We arrive at Narcotics Anonymous hoping for survival. What we find is love, courage, and a sense of connection." And that's what we have here. No matter how old you are, no matter what color you are, no matter if you come from the moon or Venus or wherever, and some people you wonder if they are of this world, but you get that sense of connection and a sense of direction. Because when I came here, I didn't have any direction. My direction was get high, go get high again. Get high, go get high again. Get high, go feel bad. Don't leave that. Feel bad, feel shame, feel guilt. Go get high again. Feel bad, feel shame, go get high again. But here it's a sense of direction, and what I've learned is, and I've seen people come in this program and go on to get, masters and PhDs. And become very productive members of society. And that's the beauty of this program. We get a sense of direction when we keep coming back. And I do believe you can do anything you want to do as long as you keep coming back and stay on that spiritual path. It says our lives we had looked for the peace. All our lives we look for the peace and safety we experience in recovery. Oh, wow. Isn't that amazing? We look for peace and safety we experience in recovery. And the safety that we get here, I remember when I first went to treatment, I slept like a baby. I slept for days because I was tired. And I wasn't trying to figure out how to go get high, who I was going to lie to. And I tell people, I wasn't one. My life is not one where I was on the street and I was prostituting and all that. I just took your money because I felt like that prostituting was a lot of work, and it was easier to just steal the money and go on. And then you have to worry about people looking for you or running into them, But the safety and the peace that I felt when I came in. As we seek our higher power will for us, we come to an understanding of our purpose in life. Isn't that wonderful? We have a purpose. And one of the things they told me about my purpose when, you wonder about when you first come in, oh, I don't know what God's will is for me. What is God's will? And you go through all this stuff and you think you're supposed to go to these exotic places to find out what God's will is for you. Somebody told me, and I heard it over and over, just stay clean, Jackie, no matter what. That's God's will for your life, to just stay clean. How simple is that? Just stay clean. That's complicated. And another one was complicated. If you don't pick up, you won't get high. How you do that? And then it says that spiritual awakening is a process. You don't get it the same day you walk in here. You have to work for it. You know, when I first started getting high, I didn't get high, but I kept practicing it until I learned how to get high. I remember one time, and I am going to shut up a minute. When I first learned how, we used to call it freebasing when I came in. I remember, some people laughing there. I remember the first time I cooked some up accidentally. It was my shoulders dropped back, and I said, this is what I've been missing all my life. Now that was a process, because the times before, some friends and I used to try to do it, and we would always set the tablecloth on fire. We would set stuff on fire because we didn't know. But, you know, as I continued to learn how to do it, I thought I got better at it. Well, I did. I ended up here. But the spiritual awakening is a process, the same way of learning how to get high was a process. And I'll take the spiritual process any day. Maybe it is what the whole process is about. We nurture our awakening spirit and know that we are finally free to live in grace, integrity, and dignity. And grace is basically unmerited favor, something we don't deserve. And I thank God I'm here today. I thank God I found out what a new norm was for me. And instead of a new norm, going back out getting high again, because I can't imagine being sick with limited mobility and using. Although I've known people who were in wheelchairs and they pawned their wheelchairs to get high. That's true stories, y'all. But anyway, I'm glad God has kept me, and you know, evidently you all too, because y'all here. And I can't think of anywhere else that I would rather be than being older, not old, older and in recovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both the speakers. Now we'll open up the floor. Anybody has any experience, strength, and hope to share on this, please come up and share it.
I am old, so I will sit down. I got clean when I was 31, and I'm 72 now. So I had, well, that's right, my name is Scott. I think everybody should know that. I mean, my name was in the paper a lot. There was an arrest this morning. There was a multi-car accident. But one of the things that I have struggled with is, as I have gotten older, there are physical limitations. You know, I have RA, and it's uncomfortable, to say the least. And then, because my whole life I've been a really active person, I had not, you know, I just didn't deal with doing nothing very well. And then later on, I developed diabetes, type 1 diabetes, and I had to use a syringe and needle. You know, and that scared the hell out of me. I mean, it scared me to death because for all these years I had spent, the syringe and needle was a god to me, pretty much. And then I got clean, and suddenly here I was about 30 years clean, 35 years clean, I guess. And this doctor tells me that I'm going to have to be sticking myself. And I'm going to have to be injecting medication. And I had some real trouble with that. I mean, I just could not come to terms with the fact that I was going to have to do something that I had sworn that one day at a time I would never do again, that I was going to have to put a needle in me again. And that was a hard thing. But I went to meetings and I talked about that, which is another pet peeve of mine. I'm 41 years clean. That doesn't mean I'm not an addict anymore. I just get beside myself sometimes when people treat me not like I'm an addict, but like I'm some sort of whatever the hell it is. Just because I have been clean more days than you doesn't mean that I've been cured. I'm an addict. I'm a dope fiend. And I've had to come to terms with this aging process because I grew up and grew old in the Fellowship of Narcotics.
I used to be one of the young people able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, could lead you to recovery.
But then I got old, and I'm not leaping so much. I almost fell over my chair getting up here. But the thing that helps me deal with this stuff is that I am able to be with people in the program of Narcotics Anonymous who help me, who love me, who accept me most of the time for the fact that I'm an addict. And I do some addict-like things from time to time. Of course, I've got a real strange mind, in case you haven't noticed that. About 3 years ago, my vision started to deteriorate, but I kept going to meetings. And so I went up to Noonan to a meeting one Friday night, and on the way home, I hit a guy head on. None of us were hurt by God's grace. By God's grace. But the fact of the matter is, I had no more business being in that car than I had being on the planet Pluto. But I could not accept the fact that I am unable to drive at night anymore. Acceptance continues to be a bugaboo for me. Because I got used to being able to do certain things. And I can't do them. And once when I discovered the first bad thing that had happened to me, no, it's not really bad, because it turned out to be pretty good. But I've had 4 transplants in my right eye. And when that first happened, I thought, oh my God, I'm not working my program. I have an eye disease that has nothing to do with addiction. And it doesn't make any difference if I'm working the steps or not, as far as my eyes are concerned. But the first thing that I did, and still do sometimes if I'm not careful, if something goes wrong in my life, the first thing I think is, oh my God, what am I doing wrong? What did I do? I've been clean this long, I should know how to do this, I should know how to do that. But I don't sometimes. But I don't. And, I come here. Now, like I say, I've grown older here, and I am getting older now. And you are too, sitting here listening to me.
Hi, my name's Danny. I'm an addict.
Okay.
God blessed me with this amazing ability. It's like Forrest Gump. I'm like a really smart, clever idiot. I'm really not very smart, but I have, as a result of that, I spend a lot of time thinking of goofy shit, and I coin stuff inadvertently because I think of goofy shit. So, first thing I'd like to say is I really like the reference to Pollyanna, because if you had said that and a young people's line, you would have gotten a lot of blank stares. You know, and it's like, that's the kind of stuff I think of, this goofy crap, right? And then I was thinking of this song, this line of a song came into my head as I was listening to everybody share. And it's a line from a song by a group called Talking Heads. And it says, many good days go by, water flowing under. Now, I stuck that song into y'all's head. You'll be thinking about that all day long. The thing is, I can't remember the name of the song. I have no, and this is where one of the problems that I run into as I age in this process. I can think of goofy crap, but I can't remember all of it. In key details. You know, and then so one day I was having a conversation with this about somebody, for some friends of mine that are like computer techies. And as a reference point, I said, I need a defrag. And now we always refer to, we need a defrag, because one of them is older like I am. I need a freaking defrag.